Hi everyone, this is the first episode, the very first episode of our Roulette Router series, right? Where every spin sparks a new conversation. Hi, I'm Clive and my partner in crime is called Hector, right? So this is our very first series of the Roulette Routers, and Hector would briefly explain how this podcast series would be conducted.
Okay, thanks a lot, Clive. Hi, everyone. I'm Hector, and today we are launching our own series, like Clive mentioned, Roulette Routers. Just a disclaimer before we begin. We'd like to remind everybody, though we have already ensured the completeness and accuracy of all the information, we would like to give a gentle reminder to everyone watching to always do your due diligence and seek professional advice with regards to any decisions you want to make on your real estate journey. More importantly, talk to us if you can.
All right. So as my partner in crime Hector has kindly showed us on the screen, this is the router that will guide our conversation, right? So the roulette itself, right, would tell us which part of it would land, right? So we have sort of sought out 6 different kind of buyer profiles that we meet on a day-to-day basis during our work as realtors, right? So they can come from investor, first timer, all the way to 3-gen family. Okay, so later we would actually be previewing a new build project called Nava Grove, right? But we'll use that roulette to guide us along. So for Hector, maybe explain a bit of how we're going to demonstrate this.
Yeah, sure. On every episode of Roulette Routers, we're going to have a bit of fun and we're going to share our unfiltered opinions and comments on new projects and happenings around the real estate industry. So, like you so rightfully mentioned, for this particular upcoming series, we're starting off with a project that's around the corner, Nava Grove. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might not have. And for this particular project, these 6 profiles speak up to us quite a bit in terms of our day-to-day interactions with clients. And as an example, for the screen itself, we're going to have a roulette wheel that spins, and while it's spinning, Clive is going to helpfully just make some sound.
All right. So if you have heard of like the Wheel of Fortune, right, it sounds like this. Then the roulette will stop, right? So we will use that as a way to see that, okay, then this lands on 1 Camp Primary School, but the show hasn't really started yet, right? So this is just how the format of the show will become, right?
Yep. And
Okay.
every episode from then on, we'll have a wheel with variables that will help to spark any conversation for for viewers alike. So
Hmm.
just a quick introduction about the project itself, Nava Grove, like we mentioned. It's a development by MCL Land and Synonymous Land, located in Ulu Pandan, D21. For those who are familiar, is at the fringe of RCR, just next to the CCR region. Unit mix for this project includes 552 units, and unit mix includes 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms across 3 blocks of 24 stories. Like we mentioned, the project is round the corner. Review starts 2nd November and booking is expected on the 16th of November.
All right.
So
So
without further ado, right, Clive, I think we should start the spinning the wheel because that's what the entire session is all about. You
right,
ready for
right.
this?
So it just sounds exciting because just like the viewers yourself when you're watching, right? Actually, both of us, this is completely unscripted, unfiltered, as well as unrehearsed, right? So I shall get the wheel started, then we'll see how that bio profile might see Nava Grove in a different light. Okay, right?
Sure,
Let's
let's hope we land
Hector.
on something. Let's hope we land on something good for our first one, right?
Right.
Okay,
So
this
are
is
we at first timer or 3-gen family? It seems like we are on 3-gen family, right?
we are on 3-gen family, but
Right,
I think
right.
in
Okay,
interest of the
okay.
discussion, right?
Okay, cool. So let me start the ball rolling first because for some of you who are watching, perhaps you're not too familiar how the 3-gen family works lah. So it's called 3-gen family because the family has 3 different generations. So you have the kids, you have the daddy, mommy in the household. You also have the grandfather and grandmother. So usually profiles of such families, right? They usually would prefer getting a larger unit. Okay, so maybe I have Hector toggle to the floor plans. I can show everybody like the 4 bed and the 5 bed layout that would be comfortable for a 3-gen family. Okay, maybe I will start with the 4-bedder dual key first, the next slide.
Sure.
Correct. So as Hector has helpfully scrolled to the right slide for me, is that Nava Grove, right, has this very interesting layout, which is a 4-bedroom dual key. So why I mentioned is very interesting because unlike a lot of the dual key units, the foyer area isn't so big as you can tell, right? And then, it typically people can do out a bit of cabinetry here. It can be a shoe cabinetry for both the one that is on bedroom 4, that's the dual key unit, right? As well as the households in the main uh unit on the right. Okay. So why I mentioned this 4-bedroom dual key could be something that a 3-gen family can look at is because sometimes you as some households would experience is that sometimes they will feel like, hey, like maybe I don't want to stay so close to my parents, but I still need my parents' help. So that's when like bedroom 4 could serve as like a bedroom for the grandma and the grandpa lah, right? So there's a balcony also. That's not very usual lah for dual key unit to have a balcony. So for Hector, what do you think about bedroom 4 being suitable for maybe the grandparents to stay in?
I think that's a worthwhile consideration. So, for the audiences who may not be familiar with this particular format of floor plan, the dual key does help to ensure privacy. The way the layman likes to think about this is having one main unit where you stay, and then you have a subsequent segregated area that's away from the unit but on the same floor plate. So I do think that for bedroom 4, like you mentioned, that could be a very viable option for an elderly couple, right? So it could be your grandparents, it could be just your in-laws that potentially want to stay with you, but they also value their privacy. So bedroom 4 as a segregation, I think it's a worthwhile space to mention because by and large, this is one of the larger dual key units. I don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think we typically see a balcony in all the projects. So we do have a very nice sizable balcony. And one thing I like to do point out is with the dual key units that's so special at this particular development, we have 23 units that are available at Nava Grove. And the beauty of this is that it's really, I call 2 units for the price of one, right? You have two
Mm,
balconies that have two particular views. You really get to enjoy that segregation between bedroom 4 and the main living space, which is very nicely carved out with no odd corners. That's
mm.
something that I feel is worthwhile mentioning for this particular dual key unit at Nava Grove.
So I just want to add to Hector's point of how like the main portion of this unit that is suitable for families is that you can see that the bedrooms, right, are actually quite rightly sized in the sense that they are not too cramped and small, right? So you can see the master bedroom has like this is the layout of a king size bed, right? So even with king size bed, you can see that there's a lot of general space even in the whole room itself, and there's actually a study corner here, which homeowners can always do up a glass window or a glass door that helps enclose it, right? And the developer provides air conditioning as well, right? And finally, just now Hector mentioned about the point about uh you're buying two for the price of one because these days because of the additional buyer's stamp duty, so usually people who would want to own a larger unit and maybe not really wish to sort of shoulder the burden of a large installment can actually rent out bedroom for. So if the household, the 3-gen family, because we have 3 different rooms here, one room for the play area for the kids, right, or that's their resting area, the other room for the grandparents, the final room is for the parents. So the bedroom 4 could also double up as a rental unit, right? If need be. Mm,
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a worthwhile point to mention as well. A lot of the dual key units are usually of a great appeal to people because of that flexibility to offer the space as an segregated rental unit. So that's definitely something that most owners in this particular segment like to consider. Again, like you rightfully mentioned, 4 bedders, right? So you've got that 3 bedroom, you've got a large study, you've got the landscape living room. That's more than enough space for a typical family size of say five to six.
mm,
So I do think that having that extra space in bedroom 4 to rent out does help to alleviate the mortgage situation. And this is something we always talk about in terms of helping clients progress along their real estate journey,
mm,
really growing their nest bigger over time.
But of course, if let's say families, 3-gen families are looking at a much bigger space, Nava Grow actually offers an even larger layout, right? Which you can see on the next slide. right? So this
The
is
five
five
bedder with
bedroom
private
with
lift,
a
right?
private lift. In fact, there's actually a four bedroom with a private lift, but we show up the private room with a private lift because we want to show how generous the space is. So this is truly right for multi-generational living. And by the word multi-generation, it could actually mean like the parents and the parents-in-law living under the same roof, right? So you can see that um same as the four bedroom low key, the rooms are all generously sized. And one important, very important thing to note is that for Nava Grove, right? Not sure if everybody is familiar with this, is that this comes under the harmonization um rules. That means you can see the aircon ledge is now non-strata. So the space there's 1,722 square foot, right? Doesn't include the aircon ledge, right? So in here, homeowners can enjoy the luxury of space, right? So none of the bedrooms are too small, oddly sized, right? So the spaces are all usable, right? So even like if you look at bedroom four, this could be the space where, you know, the grandparents could stay in, right? So sometimes, you know, when you have uh the the daddy and mommy maybe you want to play mahjong with their guests, then you know they can play in one of the bedrooms. So although everybody was sitting on the same floor plate, but then uh you know that there's always room for people to have their small little corners like within the house.
Right. Something I like to point out about the five bedroom as well. This is the really the epitome of luxury living, right? In the condominium, this is the floor plate that attracts the biggest family. They really need the space. They want something that's usable. One thing I do notice when we are talking about the floor plates for Nava Grove, the shape of it is very rigid in the sense that it's
Mm.
very rectangular, it's very landscape. It
Mm.
does not leave any weird corners. So I do see in terms of space usage, and we've been to the show flat, it's quite efficient in terms of ensuring that every space has a good utility to it. One thing I like to point out, if you look at bath two, right, between bedroom two and bedroom three, the Jack and Jill concept,
Mm.
you can tell that the developer has in mind that this is a family unit. You expect your family to grow with the property. And with this particular unit, as your kids grow up, that accessibility to having a toilet as well, right? Sharing a toilet. I think that that design concept of having a Jack and Jill accessible by both bedrooms gives it that flexibility of an ensuite toilet, but also at the same time, really not ensuring that we have some weird frost cut edge into the floor plate, keeping everything in a very rectangular, landscapish manner.
Mm. So I just want to throw a bit of spanner into the discussion that we're having, right? Because I mean, the $1 million question that everybody has in their mind, or even more than $1 million, right? Is how much would such a unit cost, right? Because we are talking about 1,222 square foot, right? So Hector, you want to make a guess, right? Because we understand maybe even at the time of recording right now and at the time of broadcast, I don't think the developer might have released the indicative pricing. So you know the audience while watching this or listening to this can actually, you know, guess, you know, what do you think is the price for 1,722 square foot, right? Yeah.
I think that's a very fair question as well. So again, some recaps on the point, right? The project is post-harmonization. So
Mm.
what you see is not apples to apples comparison per se to an older floor plate. 1,722 is big by any measure. But if you were talking about a project that is pre-harmonization, you're looking at maybe 1,850, 1,900 square feet. But bear in mind, the livable space is the same across for post-harmonization and pre-harmonization if you talk about internal living spaces. So you're not getting charged for the aircon ledges. So you do expect that the PSF to be a little bit higher than projects that are pre-harmonized. So the best comparison here, right? If I draw your attention just to a few slides here, you can't talk about Nava Grove in Ulu Pandan without mentioning Pine Tree Hill.
Mm.
Pine Tree Hill is a project that was launched last year. It's in the midst of selling right now. In fact, at the moment of recording, Pine Tree Hill has sold more than 70% of their units. So Pine Tree Hill is a good comparison because it's literally next door to Nava Grove. And at the same time, it's a pre-harmonized project. So we do have a nice comparison about understanding where prices are headed. Yes, developers have not provided any indicative pricing, but I think we are in a position to make sort of an educated guess. What
Mm.
I have on screen is transactions from Pine Tree Hill for the last 6 months. We've just taken the latest data in October. You can see across the board, right? If you're comparing bigger units to bigger units, 4-bedder as a whole is reflected in the 1216 square feet. Prices are ranging from about 2,400, some even surpassing 2006. So
Mm.
if we were to make sort of like a midpoint guess at 2,500, I think that's reasonable. PSF at Pine Tree Hill for big size unit, a 4-bedder or 5-bedder. I would expect Nava Grove to maybe be a little bit higher, perhaps 2,550, 2,600. So if you're looking at 2,550 or 2,600 as a PSF, let me just work this out on the calculator very
Actually,
quickly.
I've worked out for Hector already, so I'm just
How much
thinking.
will a 5-bedder and 1,722
So we're
cost?
looking at a number closer to $4.5 million.
Okay, is that expensive? Do you think that's expensive?
Well, that's actually a very good question because I feel that such a big size unit on a single floor plate is hard to come by, right? And families who want to relocate in such a locale, right, as we mentioned in the introductory slide, right, is that they will have the purchasing power to buy into a above 4 million quantum type house, right?
Mhm.
Because as we mentioned, this is a multi-generation housing where people are going to make the comparison to landed. And with landed prices now, easily trending above 4 million, even without renovations. This is a newly built project at 4.5 million. I feel that the quantum itself, right, it's palatable in the sense that people are going to compare with the landed, right? And not everybody wants to stay in the landed, and they're going to be able to see that it will make sense, right, if they can house the entire three-gen family within that floor plate. What do
Sure.
you think?
No, I definitely agree with that, right? That's always the age-old argument about very big size new project condominiums versus landed, whether it makes sense to be paying anywhere above 4 million, 4.5,
Mm,
when you can easily get a landed property for that. But you got to bear in mind that for condominium living, at least for me, right, this is just my opinion. I do think that condominium living is a little bit more manageable versus landed. I, for one, don't want to deal with too much maintenance. Right?
mm,
With a landed property, there's going to be a lot of cost and expense involved in maintaining land, in maintaining the area around it, your breakage. Whereas with condominium, I think that's something that I cannot set and forget, right? I do pay a maintenance on a month-to-month basis, but I don't necessarily have everybody on the same floor plane. I don't necessarily have something that's too new at 4 million around the area. So I do think that there is still consideration for families who are looking for something with a lot more ease and convenience in terms of day-to-day living versus a rented unit. But
mm,
just want to go back to the earlier point about 2006 being palatable for the area. We got to bear in mind that this is at the fringe of the RCR, right? So this is really pushing the boundaries of the RCR PSF versus an area which is just one road down where we get into the zone for CCR.
mm,
You have to understand that we are in close proximity, right? If I just take your attention down a little bit, right, to where exactly the project is, where exactly we want to be, right?
mm,
This on the slide right now I have is the site map, right? On the site map, you see that we are connected by Unu Pandan Road, Clementi Road, down along towards AYE, the Commonwealth Avenue. So we are minutes away from Buona Vista, Holland V, Dover, Ghim Moh area. These are areas that are highly dense. These are areas that have all the million-dollar HDB transactions. We are in an area where there is a lot of prosperity. We are in an area where you have a lot of people that aspire to live or own a property in those areas. So to me, that 2006 isn't just a simple comparison between, oh, Pine Tree Hill is selling at 2005, 2004, Nava Grove is more expensive in 2006. Yes and no. I do think that we have to take that into consideration that you're getting a fresh lease on a 99 years project. You're getting a new unit versus an older landed. And at the same time, you are close to that city living, but you're not exactly paying CCR prices. So I do think when we take everything into totality and consider that 2006 is really a price that RCR properties on average are already trending at. So to me, paying 2006, depending on the quantum that you have available, paying 2006 for a unit at Pine Tree, at Nava Grove definitely makes a lot of sense. You get more value for it being a premium RCR project.
Sure. I think you did a wonderful summary of the points, right? So this is really a line just beside the CCR, right? So I was wondering like how my other different buyer profiles, see this project. now that we spent quite some time talking about the three-gen family. So for Hector, you like to spin the wheel and I'll make the sound again.
Sure, please do. The right
Nice.
sizer.
Wow. So on one hand, we have a fusion family, right? Which is somewhat like an upsizer. Now we kind of have the right sizer, right? So
Okay, so maybe Clive,
yeah.
help the audience define what do we mean when we say someone's a right sizer?
So as you would know, right, this word right sizer actually refers to families that have their kids that sort of like grown up. The you know the adults in the family now probably have became grandparents would kind of face an empty nest syndrome lah, in the sense that maybe their kids will be staying on their own, or even have been working overseas and based overseas. So they kind of need to right size their house to somewhere that's smaller, somewhere it's easier to manage, less maintenance, less work on their knees, right? So, yeah. So how might you see the right sizer, buyer profile, react to a project like this? What kind of floor plans would they be looking at? What kind of pricing would they be looking at?
I think we talk about floor plans, right? There are a couple of clients that I'm currently serving, and I deem them as the right sizer. So yes, like you rightly put, these are typically older folks with children that are grown up, probably married, already moved out of the nest, right? So we are looking at older folks that potentially are private property owners. Usually they live in like a three-bedder, a four-bedder condominium, or they are very much in that big HDB floor plate. And when I say big HDB floor plate, I'm referring to things like a jumbo flat, a executive apartment, right, as a HDB class asset. So they're really looking into going towards a unit that is usually a bit easier to manage, both
Mm,
in terms of upkeep, cleaning, and maybe just overall quality of life. So I do think that a two-bed is typically the unit that they want to look at. You are usually dealing with a husband and wife scenario. Sometimes you deal with siblings, brothers and sisters. A two-bedder unit seems sufficient.
mm,
Right now in the market, you're looking at anywhere from 600 to about 700 square feet for a two-bed unit. Dumbbell layout, right? Dumbbell layout is something that a lot of people like and love, simply because there's enough privacy, there is efficient use of the floor, and there's not much wasted space with, say, a very long foyer or long walkway. I don't know whether you have the same thoughts on that.
yeah, in fact, I do. I feel that this dumbbell layout, right? It's a very optimal size for a right sizer, in the sense that perhaps they will have their kids coming to the house, right? And there's kind of like a guest room in the form of bedroom too, right? So that also adds the other additional layer of privacy lah, should there be visitors. And I always believe in, a two-bedder with a two-bath. So, at least the main owners have their own bath, and the guests won't be embarrassed to use the bath that the owners are using, right? Another point to note is that for some of you who are looking at this 700 square foot, who might be bulking at this size, right? It's worth noting that you know a typical two-bedder that's out there, there's pre-harmonization. That means you include the aircon or the AC latch, it will be easily 760 square foot, or the typical one is 764. So in fact, right, when you're looking at a 2006 PSF, actually the real price is maybe 10% cheaper. So if you just cut off 260 off 2,600, you're looking at somewhere closer to 2,004, 2,350, which is still something that's quite palatable. Like if you compare with, other projects, maybe like Pine Tree Hill, right? So
Mm.
for anybody who's interested to know more, if you're a right sizer or you're thinking of planning for a right sizer family, you can have us, run through review the floor plans, run through review the pre and post harmonization prices, and see whether there's any price gap we can take advantage of. Mm,
Now, Clive, I think that's a good point. When we talk about pricing, that's
mm,
potentially palatable. And again, those are just our estimates, not official sources.
that's right.
But we never really talked about quality of life, right?
Yes, yes.
When we think about right sizes, there's always an issue about, yes, they're trying to find a sweet spot
Mm,
in terms of size of the unit, in terms of livable space. They are finding their sweet spot in terms of money because they're potentially selling off their current property and they're right sizing to something else. And it could always be an aspirational thing where a couple thinks about moving up, right? They want to
Mm,
enjoy condo living. Maybe they've been living in a jumbo HDB because the family was big, size
mm,
was a consideration. But now, just maybe with husband and wife, they're thinking about moving to something a bit smaller. Don't have to do so much cleaning and all that, right?
mm,
I do think there's also the aspect, especially for right sizer, which is very pertinent, and that's the quality of life. You
mm,
want to be in an area where it's a little bit less dense. You want to be in an area where it's probably close to nature, close to amenities. And I do think that Nava Grove has these factors. A lot of people don't realize this, but Ulu Pandan, yes, people make fun of the word, right? Oh, it's very Ulu. The location is not not central to a lot of things. But I like to argue that that's actually something in favor of the project. You're in a project where you are near enough to amenities such as Clementi Mall, Sunset Way, Star Vista, minutes drive away from Ghim Moh Market, etc. But you are also not so near that you have such high human traffic and density, and you're surrounded by nature. One thing I do like to point out is that you're going to be in vicinity, your views are going to be in the vicinity of Dover Forest, your Clementi Forest. The whole landscaping, and I know this is something you want to talk about, right? The whole landscaping within Nava Grove as a theme, as a project, centers around lush greenery, centers around nature and beauty and wellness. So I do think that this is something you want to consider, especially for older folks who are looking to right size to a place that has a slower pace of life, still near enough to the modern amenities and creature comforts, but also somewhere where you can rest, retire in your golden years. I don't know how you feel about that, Clive.
yeah, so Hector, I fully agree with you. So if you can pull up the slide, right, regarding the artist's impression of like the facilities as well as the amenities within the project itself, right? So which yes, that's right. So maybe we scroll to some of the slides showing like maybe one of the image showing the forest walk, right, which
Yeah.
mimics the military treetop walk. Yeah, so yeah.
All right,
Okay,
this one,
maybe this
right?
this is one. Yeah, so the project has a lot of these spaces, right? For the right sizer to have a morning walk. So imagine if you're a right sizer and then you get to see this, a quiet corner, go for a morning stroll, right? It actually adds to your quality of life as what Hector mentioned. Then I also want to scroll you to that part where they have pots that is facing the main road, right?
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. I
So
think this
at
one.
night, or like you don't really have to go too far away from your house to enjoy a nice forest view, right? Or even enjoy a outdoor dining
Correct.
corner over here.
I do want to emphasize on this as well. Don't you think that when we talk about views, there's always that assumption that you're a bit higher on elevated ground?
Hmm.
So I do want to point out that Nava Grove is a project in which the developer has elevated the site. So the site is on elevated ground, probably about 3 stories typically, and you have further elevation by having all these elements of floating cabinets, floating pavilions, which gives an overall view. Like if you can tell from the picture, right, from this artist's impression, the development is not on that same ground level as the roads, as the pavements. It's elevated. So somebody say who's getting a unit, say on the second floor of a building, right? In Nava Grove. That second floor itself, it will be typically about your typical 6, maybe 7 stories. So that elevation does give you that overall perspective. It does give you an elevation, right, in terms of your view to the surrounding nature and lush greenery. So a lot of all these elements have been built into Nava Grove, which reflects that particular quality.
Mm. Right. So I'm sure that at this juncture, right, any one of you who are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, be it whether you're right sizer or different of the buyer profiles, you can always, give us a private message. Yeah, we can arrange, to let you have a viewing of this place when the preview starts on the 2nd of November, right? So there's this we started our 6 buyer profiles, right? So we landed at 2, right? And that's like enough to cover us for the conversation for today, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, Hector, if you have anything to add, right?
I think
Summarize the thoughts for today's episode.
Sure. Just for the two buyer profiles, right? If we are talking about three-gen family and the right sizes, I think at Nava Grove there are units, there are particular floor plates that would appeal and also be very suitable for these two groups. I understand that we're all routers, we definitely want to sell the project, but I wholeheartedly endorse the project from a quality of life standpoint. I think really the project is built and centered around family living.
Mm,
Yeah, definitely going into that phase where now the design reflects the philosophy of the project. No longer are we just fixated on price or the size of the floor plate, but we're now heading into that generation. I feel like there's an inflection point, right? When it comes to project design and the upcoming launches, there is a project for everyone out there. And for Nava Grove, I think it sits very nicely with the three-gen family. It sits very nicely with the right sizes. We're
mm,
looking for a bit of relaxation and enjoyment in their golden years. But also, it's a project that will grow with you. So again, I know this is something in terms of my summary and my thoughts. These two groups reflect very, very nicely for a project like Nava Grove. We definitely want to be speaking to them. So
mm.
so yeah. How
So
about you of yourself, Clive?
yeah, so
Any
my
thoughts?
last thoughts will be like I know we missed out on the four other buyer profiles. So if you happen to be in any of those buyer profile groups like HDB upgraders, first timer, or even an investor, right, who wants to see this project or even 1 km to primary school, there's been some discussion on whether this is really within 1 km to Henry Park Primary School, right? So we save this for perhaps another episode if any one of us want us to do for other profiles, right? Or you can, simply, PM us on the pod, right? Then we can address your concerns. And if you really want us to bring you to look at the project, yeah, so we can always arrange it, right? Yeah. Then finally, as because this is our very first episode, and our team, right, actually took a very long time to actually bring this together, this game show format, in terms of talking about uh real estate, sort of like a game show, talk show type format. So I hope that everybody can like, share, subscribe, right, to us. So gives us more energy to do more videos in the future, right? So
Yeah. So I
yeah,
just want to end off very quickly, Clive.
yeah,
So I've been keeping this within myself for the entire day already. So I just want to say that we will never give you up. We will never let you down. So
yes,
yeah, just a bit of a cold joke from me. But thanks everyone. Again, if you enjoyed our content, please like, subscribe, and reach out to us.
right, yes, exactly. So see y'all on the next episode. Take care, guys. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.